Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. As Roster Mania continues, one of the big questions in the Substitute Mania period is where is Gunless going to end up? He may have revealed that OpTic and some other teams as well that are based in Texas are certainly off his radar in terms of teams you might be joining. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Modern Warfare 2 is only a couple of weeks away at this point, and one of the questions is over there. What is the gentleman's agreement situation going to look like? How many things in the game will have to get banned for this game to be particularly viable from a competitive perspective? And I thought it was interesting in light of that with Hitch actually bringing up this clip from back in Gfinity 2013. Probably Advanced Warfare, certainly Black Ops 3, gentlemen's agreements weren't really a thing, and the pros would practically use whatever was allowed in the rule set. And this included things even at the World Championship in 2013 when players like Dashy were bringing out the riot shield and the shotguns were in play and you could use all this type of stuff. Nowadays, of course, usually all that gets banned. And actually, Toho here, legendary, Spanish Call of Duty player, this was the team they had to the Black Ops 2 event, Gfinity 2013. If you guys are around in the Black Ops 3 days as well, I'm sure you guys know some of these names. Method, Sick, the Spanish Methods, Toho and Legend as well, here on Giants as they were a few years later. They beat OpTic in one of these games by Toho going on a streak and bringing out the Dragonfire in the final few seconds of the game. So yeah, the Dragonfire was kind of like the original streak. You guys remember when you first downloaded Black Ops 2, it was UAV, Lightning Strike, Dragonfire, and yeah, he got it. You just fly this little turret thing around, took down a few players with it, and yeah, that was what won them the game. And usually this type of streak wouldn't really be allowed in modern Call of Duty, and you can argue there's a good reason why certain things are now banned or GA'd more than they were back in the day. It's just kind of funny looking back on things here where, no one really did gentlemen's agreements and he's just running around here with the Dragonfire, gets taken down, but it's good enough for Giants to win the map at the time. So what do you guess is going to happen in Modern Warfare 2? Is it going to be the longest GA list and ban list of all time in Call of Duty? It may well be, especially because of all these attachments in the game now. But also some would say the COD pros nowadays are just too soft because Clay's always said, look, the game comes out, let's just play the game as it is. Now I think the things like Claymores and stuff should go, but apart from that, maybe there is room to have more things allowed in the rule set than we presently do the last couple of years. Let's speak Rostermania. Firstly, this from London and Paul X. I honestly think London would have confirmed their team by now. Zero Nasty, Paul X in the scene, if not for the whole buyout situation with Koi that's probably still going on behind the scenes. So Paul X actually already has the Ravens, as Ben points out here, the Ravens calling card in his Battle.net thing. So yes, it's practically confirmed. He's not trying to hide at this point that he's going to go back to London. Now, speaking of this tourney real quick, so tomorrow night, the Hitch 10K Cold War throwback is going on, 4v4 variants. I think a lot of teams are already being formed for this. This is one of Method's teams. Me, Vivid, and Nero need one. So, of course, you would think maybe they just put the full Boston team together. This is one of the things that's exciting actually about this time of the season is that whenever tournaments come around, if they're not maybe official CDL tournaments, it's possible players are kind of allowed to compete with their full team. When the new game launches, I think that the CDL really clamps down on actually having any tournaments with the full teams. Used to be a great time back in Advanced Warfare and even in games like that, Infinite Warfare, for example, when the game would come out and the first 2Ks, 5Ks that were going on were all the top teams. And then you got to see which guys were good, which guys weren't so good. And then by the time you get to the first LAN event, then you've got an idea to build off. The CDL the last couple of seasons has really tried to make it that the first you get to see if the pro teams playing together against other pro teams is at the first event, which in fairness is okay if the game starts in December as it does this year. The season starts in December. If it starts in late January, it's an absolute disaster. We've seen that for the last couple of years. So I'm not sure why Awakening isn't joining Methods for this one, but yeah, that is one of the teams in the works most certainly. Now, some pros, of course, have gone back home for a while. Drazah's back in Alaska for now, and even as Monarch says, come back to LA. I'm becoming one with the ice, Drazah says here in the reply. So, pros going back home, going to different states and stuff like that. But in due course, they'll be back to where the team is based for the upcoming season. Now, Gunless has been a massive question mark over the last few weeks. Will he actually get a spot in the CDL? He then kind of revealed that he needs a sub spot to maintain his visa. And then he kind of implied that, yeah, he's found a sub spot somewhere or things are going a little bit better. He's certainly in conversations, I'm sure, with teams to get him locked in. And we were wondering, okay, which teams make the most sense for Gunless? New York Subliners, of course, already have their own substitute in Wardy. They probably don't need to lock in another one quite as of yet. And we thought that Gunless, given his history with the OpTic guys, could be a good fit there just because OpTic do need a good substitute this season just in case things go wrong again. And guys like Arcitys, where I think he was kind of giving credit to Ricky here for going to watch the Los Angeles Rams game. But actually, Gunless, interestingly enough, and I did mention this briefly yesterday, and we figured out why he was going to New York to watch the New York Mets game. It's kind of strange why he somehow like a fan of the Mets and former was kind of wondering that actually here in the reply in a second. right? City Field hero Cammy says. And then Form was like, what started this Mets journey? Says, always been a big fan of baseball growing up, never really chose a team. Mets are the underdog, so he flew out to New York to watch them play a game last night. I think they did lose, so unfortunate seeds for Gunless. But regardless, pretty interesting because, would he just fly to New York on a whim to watch this game? Maybe, maybe not. Or could there be any other reason why he might be there in New York, especially because, the New York organization could be an interesting one for Gunless to potentially go to if that was to be the case, right? I think at some point this season, I wouldn't be surprised if Gunless is on a starting spot again, but he needs to get in a good position from a substitute perspective to make that happen. Now, this is what I thought was pretty interesting, that Gunless goes on to say, okay, I'm happy I got to saw the Mets playoff game in person, actually a lot of fun, helped me distract myself, etc. The weather here in New York, New Jersey was amazing. Really been missing this weather for the last couple of years now, and then goes on to say the following. I thought this was kind of the insightful tweet. This trip to New York really showed me how much I miss the East Coast and how much better I feel here mentally and physically. This 2 seasons in Dallas is for the birds I hated, right? So quite the statement really on kind of what he felt about Dallas the last couple of years. He was of course on, I guess, the Seattle Surge, which I'm supposing were based in Dallas in Cold War. Then in Vanguard he was on the Los Angeles Guerrillas, also based in Texas, right? Their team is in Texas, despite the fact that they're an LA team. And the majority of CDL teams, maybe not the majority, but I would say about half are based in Texas right now. And we've seen a similar discussion to this with other players as well, the likes of Minnesota Rokkr. Not that many players find Minnesota as a destination so attractive to move to, so I believe Minnesota are planning to either get a facility or something in Texas for the upcoming season for Attach and those other guys to be there at least for the winter, and then maybe when it's spring, summer again, they'll come back and play their matches in Minnesota or something. But I think there was some talk at least about maybe Attach thought, can I really handle this again? We thought maybe even Attach to LA or something, just so he could get back in an environment where he'd maybe like to be in terms of a location. And it's a big thing for some of these players, right? They want to be where they feel mentally and physically the best, and Gunless is no exception. But if he doesn't like the environment in Dallas, he's had a hard time there the last couple of seasons, wants to go back to the East Coast. How many teams are really based over there in the East Coast, right? There are a couple, of course, but in fairness, the majority of teams are based in Dallas now. I mean, as I say, even Minnesota might be going over there. Seattle are there. Atlanta FaZe, in fairness, they're based in Atlanta, so that might be more viable. Florida Mutineers, they're based out of Florida. I think London played out of North Carolina last season, so that's that going on. LA Thieves, of course, are based in LA, and then the majority of other teams are based in Texas. The New York team is based in Texas. OpTic, most certainly, OpTic Texas. They're based, obviously, not far from the heart of Dallas, and then a lot of other teams as well in a similar position. Now, even Vegas Legion, or Paris Legion as they were last year, I think were in, at least, I don't know where Temp was staying, but I think they had some of their guys in Dallas briefly last season, or at least in the Texas area. I think they may be moving to Vegas now, so bit of a tricky one. But yeah, do you think this is anything to do with what Gunless's plans potentially are? Because if he has got an offer from somewhere or another, and it's a team that's based in Texas, do you really think he'd be saying that he doesn't want to stay in Dallas anymore, and he absolutely hates it there, and doesn't want to live there at all costs, feels so much better? Now, just because he says this doesn't necessarily mean if he had a great offer on the table from OpTic that he wouldn't go down that route, because, in a better environment in terms of team situation, might feel better physically, mentally, regardless. But, still, it's interesting, because at the same time, Attach also implied, or he was talked about that Attach maybe didn't like so much being in Minnesota, but yet he's still going to be there at least for part of the upcoming season. But if Gunless does feel as strongly about this as he seems to, then even if OpTic did give him an offer to go back to Dallas and live there with the team, then he'd be like, you know what, I'm not really happy to do that, right? It obviously feels a lot better on the East Coast, it seems. And is there a possibility, let's say he was the New York substitute or another New York substitute, could he be in New York but the team based in Dallas, right? It's not out of the question, just because he wouldn't necessarily have to be there all the time. So there's a possibility he could join a team as a sub and live elsewhere, just in case they needed him on a last minute basis type thing. But it wouldn't be an ideal team environment as a result. So definitely intrigued your thoughts on that one in the comment section below. Does this mean that Gunless is not going to OpTic and other teams that are based out there in Texas? And does he have something else lined up potentially on the East Coast somewhere or another? Wanted to dive into a few things on the OpTic side then, just as we close out the video, because if they're not getting Gunless, who do they get as their potential substitute for the upcoming season? Thought it was pretty interesting just to mention Brustini quickly, because he's another name who's been in that conversation really. We think that potentially LAG could be a decent target for Brustini, just because, he's got the relationship with his brother Arcitys, who's now gone to LAG, so that might make a bit of sense if Brustini was to go over there. We don't expect him to get a starting spot on the team, but, still, Brustini, great player, good relationships with the Chicago Huntsman guys. That's a possibility as well, that OpTic could get a guy like Brustini, and in fairness, could fit the role rather well. I think Brustini in that flex position can bring a fair few of the intangibles. I think Scump and the other guys rated him highly when he was part of the Huntsman as well. So, one to keep your eyes on. He was on FaZe's substitute bench, of course, last season. I kind of don't expect that to continue with RC's not there any longer. So I think for Prasini, I would probably say maybe between OpTic and LA Guerrillas, that'd be my perspective. This I thought was kind of funny here from OpTic. What's the easiest game to reach number 1 at? I don't know if they were kind of trying to roast Doug Sentimar today, because he obviously got to number 1 on the Vanguard ranked leaderboards and not necessarily the other games. But the OpTic guys actually did a tier list of the Modern Warfare 2 maps the other day. This is from Modern Warfare 2 Original, but also Modern Warfare 2 coming up in just a couple of weeks' time. And one of the maps they mentioned here was Strike. And I wanted to talk about Strike here because I actually think Hex is kind of speaking facts on this, right? He's saying it's the best SnD map we've ever seen. And this is a map I believe, I want to talk about it just because I think it's coming back in Modern Warfare 2. Or at least it's been seen in, like there was some elements of the map that were found in either a ground war lobby or something, which makes me feel like it probably is going to be in the launch of the game, at least at some point or another. This is arguably, I think, the best search and destroy map ever. Hex certainly thinks it is. Like, this is the map, in my opinion, the only map in COD history. If you guys have played this, even in Modern Warfare Remastered, that's where this screenshot is from, you'll know that this is absolutely phenomenal. Probably the only map I can see in COD history that if Counter-Strike was played on it, it actually could still be viable. This is the overview of the map if you guys aren't familiar with it, because as I said, I believe this is in the upcoming game. And the real problem we've had over the last few titles has been the map set related issues. And Strike would be a great ad for search and destroy, most certainly, because we've had some dodgy SD maps the last couple of seasons. This is the offensive spawn here on the bottom right hand side. The defensive spawn is on the top left. And the A bomb side, I think it's A bomb side, is in this kind of courtyard thing here over here. And then the B bomb side is over kind of in the back spawn. And there was like a nade spot. Honestly, this map is so good. There's so many different angles at play. You can go on top of this staircase here and see the cross over towards this bomb site. And if you want to cross, you can drop a smoke in the middle of the map. So you kind of have to know your smoke lineups and stuff to get that smoke landed pretty perfectly. And if you do land a perfect smoke, you can maybe run straight into the bomb site, or you can cut into the deli building thing going on here. And then the defense has many different options. They can try and get hold of the flowers side of the map, play for a late flank. There's so many great things you can do on this, and just really like intelligent map design in terms of the amount of like angles and counter angles there are, like the amount of cars in the middle that if you jump on top of, you get a very nice angle into a certain part of the map. For example, over to here, but then if you do stand there, then you're vulnerable from elsewhere. So just a really intelligent map making, I think, and one of the best maps I've ever played on for search and destroy. And if it does come into this game, which hopefully it will, I think this will be a fantastic time. So looking forward to hopefully the return of Strike for the upcoming game, because there's just so much tactical depth to this map, especially with smokes and stuff in play, that you really don't get on any other search and destroy map that I've at least played in my lifetime at the very least. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
What the f are you using? Thompson?
I can't peek down.
Nade's top fire. Top fire, one shot to a nade.
You about to square up with this? This is the Paris special, dude. Yo, it didn't work then. I'm not sure if it's gonna work now.
Nothing on bomb yet. Nothing on bomb yet. They're just waiting for a pick, bro. We're good.
Yeah, I'm just holding.
They're waiting for a pick. We're good, bro.
I on top of fire going.